Tiny is distracting me with his cuteness. Tiny is just a cute little distraction. Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is not a Dyna video. I know you've all been waiting for more Dyna videos and you wanted to see how I do the alignment on my drivetrain on the Dyna. But we are not doing the drivetrain alignment yet because we ended up having to order a new motor mount stabilizer because this is what the one that came off of there looked like. Like, we took it apart obviously, but it's all rusty. Threads here kind of rusty, but got rusty threads inside of these. Those are rusty, and then the rubber is just looking all crusty. So it's all crusty and rusty and a little sad looking and needs to be replaced. So I've got one of those on order. It's supposed to be here June 1st, it says, and I could only find aftermarket ones, but I should be able to order a actual HD one through my dealership. So that's what I'm gonna try to do tomorrow, and hopefully that'll show up sooner because I know that there's one just a few hours away from me. And yeah, then we'll be able to continue on with the Dyna project. But for this video, I just thought I'd give you guys an update on the Fluorosilicone seals that I put in the copper lines on my Shovelhead, because I did make a video of me kind of doing an experimental sealing job on my copper lines on my Shovelhead, where I used like Fluorosilicone tubing or hose actually, and sliced pieces of it and used these little sections of this Fluorosilicone hose as the seals in the brass fittings on my copper lines. So rather than using compression fittings, I'm using these Fluorosilicone seals that I cut out of some Fluorosilicone tubing. And I just wanted to give you guys a bit of an update on how those are working out for me, because the bike has been running for a while since I put those in, and it's definitely gotten hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold. And I just wanted to show you guys how those are holding out. And if you guys missed that video of me actually doing the seals, then you can find it. I'll put a link to it in the video here. And yeah, you guys can go check that out, and you can come back and watch this video to see how it all ends up working out for me. But yeah, anyway, we will just get into this video right now. Okay, so the seals I am referring to here are on my external drain lines that come down from my heads. And so you can kind of see on this one where the blue Fluorosilicone has actually started to bulge out from around the fitting there from heat, but mostly just from those lines being done up probably a little tighter than they needed to be, because I actually cut the seals probably a little longer than they needed to be for those fittings. So I'm gonna replace those. They're not leaking though, so that's good. They're also starting to bulge out on this crossover line here. You can see there where it was starting to bulge out around that fitting. But anyway, I'm gonna replace those, and then we can do a follow-up again in a couple days and show you guys how they're holding out. And then I'll just show you the rest of the lines. So I replaced that one, which is nice. Also replaced the two down in here. They look oily right now, but that's just because my push rods are leaking and all the oil just blows back onto there. But the lines themselves, they're not leaking. And then also these lines under my oil cooler, they're dirty, but they're not actually leaking. I used to have drips on them before I replaced those seals. They were like dripping. They're not leaking, they're just dirty from other leaks and filth. None of the oil lines are leaking. For anyone who missed my video of actually doing these seals, you can go back and watch it, or I'll give you a little bit of an idea of how it's all working in this video. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm just gonna get these lines off, and then I will be able to cut myself some new seals for these, and hopefully we will not have the same problem again. There you go, it just pops out. Okay, those seals actually don't even look bad. You can see the seal is actually still good, and it's just this outside edge there that's kind of, well, that's where I ended up like actually just peeling it off with my fingernail where it bulged out a little bit there. But actually the seal, it's actually good. It's not bulging out the other direction at all. Like I said, it's just that these lines were done up probably a little tighter than they needed to be, and the seal's actually thick for where it's actually going. Yeah, let's see what this end looks like. Actually, I'm just gonna take this one right out. Have a look at it. You can see there, yeah, that's end there's chewed up a little bit just from it bulging out and then me cutting it off a little bit. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be replacing them. But that kind of gives me an idea of how thick I'm going to want to make the new ones. And I'm going to replace these anyway, even though they're not bulging on the ceiling side. And I'm just going to cut it to about that thickness where you can see it's actually been torn off. So let's pull the other ones out and see what they're looking like. But this is actually good news because it's not bulging to the inside. So let's take this one off. There we go. Pull that out. Definitely be cutting some smaller seals for these areas. Something not as thick because I don't want to have to do them up tight, just to be able to catch a couple threads on the fittings. That's what you get when you're experimenting, right? When you have a project that is basically a prototype, trial and error. I'd say this is actually pretty good for an experiment. That's not horrible results. It is sealing, nothing's leaking, and nothing's getting into my oil. These things aren't bulging into the oil lines themselves. I'll just have to take off the crossover line on my rocker boxes on the other side and take a look at those ones, and then I'll be cutting all new seals for all of these lines and replacing them and not doing them up too tight and just hoping that issue goes away because I don't like them to be bulging out. It just doesn't look good when you got seals bulging out on your oil lines. So all right, get this one off of here. This coil is actually, it's out of a torch of some sort. I don't remember exactly what it's out of. I have such a bad memory when it comes to that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's actually out of a torch of some sort. So the rest of my lines, my dad bent by hand. There we go. All right, so I've got my seals cut, and my dad actually helped me cut them because I kind of suck at doing it for some reason. But I've got some nice new seals here. So I'll do my crossover line and put that back together first. Okay, I've got the other side all buttoned up. Just a couple little tips for if you are going to use this at all is when you're putting your seals in, you do want to make sure that you just put a little bit of oil just on the end of each seal, just so that you get a bit of slip on the fitting and you don't end up binding. And just put a little thin film of oil just on the edge, either edge of the seals, and then that way it'll get some good slip on the fitting when you're doing it up. So I just do the one end and then I pop it in there, and then I use the line actually to hold it to do the other end, and it should all just do up nice. That's what I did on the other side. I only did it up just a little bit tighter than finger tight on the other side. And these ones, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna get it finger tight, and then I'm just gonna go like just a little bit tighter just to make sure nothing's gonna end up being too tight. Yeah, and so far, like compared to what I was using before for my seals for my copper lines, these are actually working really well, and actually like as good as I was hoping they would work. And I was kind of expecting that they would work pretty good just because of the material that this hose is made out of. And yeah, it's super soft and malleable, and it's high heat. It's rated for high heat. It's rated for like 450 degrees Fahrenheit or something crazy like that. So the problem with the stuff I was using before is it was oil and fuel resistant, and it was not rated for high heat either. The advantage you get from having like a soft seal in your copper lines is that you're just giving your copper lines just a little bit of cushion to help prevent vibration, because we all know that vibration or just like bending movement of copper can actually cause it to harden over time, which will eventually make it more prone to cracking. Just from reading forums, a lot of people don't actually use soft seals in their copper lines. This actually will help you to have a bit of cushion in your copper lines. Yeah, and same idea, just gonna do it up finger tight, and then I'll just do it just a tiny bit more with the wrench, like maybe a quarter, half a turn with a short wrench, just to be sure that nothing's gonna be too tight. Not even one notch, or maybe just one notch, but that's as tight as I want to make those. So yeah. And as you can see, they've got like, I don't know if you guys can see that, but they do have a bit of movement, which is them just moving on the soft seals. So that's that. So guys, that's that. Yeah, as you guys saw, those fluorosilicone seals actually are working out quite well, as long as you don't over tighten the fittings. And like I said, this is all experimental because my bike is basically a big experiment. It's just a custom build from the ground up. And when you're doing custom builds and stuff, then everything is basically an experiment, and it's all trial and error. And so far, this has just been a trial and not really any error, other than like just doing a couple fittings up too tight. I feel like I've said that enough in this video, but I do want to just make a point of, just so that everybody knows that there was no fault with the sealing method. It was just the fact that I'd done them up just a little bit too tight. And yeah, that's something that you're gonna just have to make sure, whichever application you might be using this for, you want to make sure you know how thick your seals are gonna have to be. And like I said, you don't have to do them up super tight. That's another advantage to having a soft seal inside those fittings, is that you don't have to do anything up super tight. Think about it when you put your oil filter on. You give it that little film of oil on the rubber O-ring, and you don't have to do that oil filter up super tight. And then think about how hard it is to actually get that oil filter off when it's time to take it off. It's kind of the same principle with these seals and these oil lines. You don't got to do it up super tight because it is a soft seal, and it doesn't take much pressure at all for it to actually seal on the surface of the brass fittings. So this is my method. It seems to be working so far. I will give you guys a short little update video in a couple days, or whenever I've ridden my bike a couple times, depending on the weather. After these have heated up and cooled back down, I'll show you guys what they're looking like again, and you guys can determine for yourselves whether or not this is something that might work for you. But as always, guys, like I've always said before, I am not a professional, and I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling you what I do and what seems to work for me so far. So if you liked any of this, if you like what you see, or if you just like me, or even if you don't like me but you like my bike, then like this video, comment down below, subscribe to my channel if you please, and yeah, hit that little notification bell if you want to be notified every time I put a new video out. And like always, my lovely YouTube people, I will catch you all on the flip side. Peace. Wherever Tiny went. Tiny? Poor fatty. Oh, what a sad little guy. Poor Tiny fell asleep on the floor waiting for me. Okay.